You are listening to Woodland Walks, a podcast for the Woodland Trust, presented by Adam Shaw. We protect and plant trees for people to enjoy, to fight climate change and to help wildlife thrive.
Today I am off to meet the Tree Pilgrim, which is the moniker of Martin Hügi, who is doing a proper marathon pilgrimage from Land's End to John O'Groats using the Woodland Trust's ancient tree inventory. So he's going to visit a huge number of ancient and veteran trees, something like 6,500 of them he's expecting along his walk. And I caught up with him in Shrewsbury in Shropshire, which is just on the River Severn, about 150 miles or thereabouts northwest of London. And I caught up with him in a rather rainy churchyard. This is very unusual, Martin, because normally I join people on walks, but actually you've been walking for, what day is it?
I'm on day 79 today.
You had to
think about that.
Yeah, so you've actually taken a break and you've come into Shrewsbury. And we are in a green space, in a churchyard, where now we're here for a special reason. Why?
So last night I was given a talk talking about ancient trees and the need for greater protection, and just telling my story of what I've been up to.
Right. But first of all, tell me a bit about this pilgrimage you're going on.
Yeah, so I'm calling it an ancient tree pilgrimage, and it is a walk from Land's End to John O'Groats, and I spent 12 months planning meticulously a route between some of the most amazing trees that I could fit into a north-south route.
Right.
And working out the detail of how I was going to get to those trees via other trees on the ancient tree inventory.
So Land's End to John O'Groats, which that walk, a famous sort of trip, which is called Lego for short, is it?
Le Jog,
Le
or
Jog.
Joggler if you go the other way.
Right, okay. Le Jog.
Land's End to John O'Groats.
Okay. Is long if you do it straight, but you've gone a sort of wiggly woggly way, haven't you?
Right, yeah.
Because you're going actually via interesting trees. So how many miles is that going to be?
Well, it's if you were going to go a sort of more classic route, it would be something like 1,080 or 1,100 sort of miles. The route that I planned is 2,077 miles, so it's double.
2,077 mile walk.
Yeah, I had estimated doing 18 miles a day. That was my average. I'd sort of planned rough stops where I thought I might be able to get to. I'm more doing about 13 miles a day, which is not a lot less, but it's I'm spending more time with the trees, and we also we lost our dog on the day that I was setting off. We went down to Penzance to start, and we took our old family dog with us, and he was very old and elderly, and he actually died on the morning that I was going to set off. So we just drove back home and didn't fancy starting again for another couple of weeks. So if you can be behind on a pilgrimage, I was already 2 weeks behind, but actually I'm on a pilgrimage, so it's about the journey.
Do you say you're a religious person?
Not in the classic sense of an organised religion, but I do have a spiritual side to me, for sure. Yeah.
And what difference then? You talk about this tree pilgrimage and it not being about the distance, it's about the journey, which one often hears. So what, if anything, have you learnt about your feelings for the natural world, or what you think it can offer you, or what you can offer it during this journey so far?
Yeah, I think I'm learning about my connection with nature and ancient trees and the sites that they sit in as being good places to access that connection. So one of the stories that I tell is about meeting the Majesty Oak in Fredville Park in Kent, and we went with a conservation trip with work, and it's just such an incredible tree at 12.5 metre girth and a maiden oak, and it just goes straight up, and it's its bulk, its sheer dominance and size literally blew my mind to the point where I was speechless for a couple of minutes, and I wasn't the only one. And because I think it just it takes you out of the ordinary state of this is what a tree is, and it put me into a state of this is something different, and it was a real feeling of awe. And I get that from ancient trees. Sometimes I will feel awe, and that's a rare feeling in my life and potentially a lot of people's lives. And I think that's that's what I'm seeking, I suppose. That it's almost like a gateway feeling for other potential feelings that you can cultivate around nature and trees. Just things like respect and gratitude. And I've actually found myself thanking some of the trees because they're just so full of life, and they're persisting, and the resilience, and feeling actual gratitude that they persist and are doing what they do.
And you must meet a lot of people on your walk, 70 odd days in so far. They must ask you what on earth you're doing, and they must give you some sort of response. Have people been surprised, shocked? Do they think you're nuts? Do they go, "Oh, can I join you?" What's been the response?
All of those things, I suppose. Yeah, that I'll sort of tell them what I'm doing, and as soon as I get to ancient tree inventory, I get a blank look. You get that.
Okay, well, you say lots of people don't know about this. Let's talk about this. Yeah. First of all, what is it, and then how do people get involved?
Yeah, so it is a citizen science project. It's an open, publicly accessible data set of ancient trees across the UK.
And so for instance, today, if we think we've found this ancient tree, we would go on the register and go, here it is. We think it's an ancient oak or whatever it is, and we'd measure its girth, its width at about. Do you do it about 3 meters high? Is that what you're meant to do?
It's 1.5 meters.
So only twice wrong. There we are. Yeah, a good margin of error. Yeah, 3 meters too high. I know I'm short as I is. I've overblown idea of how tall I am. So 1.5 meters high. You sort of take a tape measure and you measure it, and you say you think you know what it is. You give it a good go, and there's lots of online apps you can help you. And you sort of make comments about the tree. You sort of say it's in this sort of condition, but you don't have to be an expert. It is just fine to give it a go.
Absolutely, and actually you don't need a tape measure. You can make an estimate, and if you don't know what the tree is exactly, or don't know what it is at all, you can still add it to the inventory, and it won't appear as a public-facing record at that point, but it will show up to an ancient tree verifier, a volunteer ancient tree verifier. It will show up as an unverified tree, and I'm an ancient tree verifier since 2008, and I'll be able to see that there's an unverified tree here, and I can go along, I can say, well, it is an oak. I can measure it if I can measure it, if it's possible, and I can record other details about the tree, like its veteran characteristics.
So already, I don't want to get too bogged down into all of this, but I get notable trees, like an event has happened under them, and there's lots of amazing trees where the Magna Carta was signed under one, the tall puddle martyrs, the first ever union was created under a tree, so there's lots of historically important trees like that. But the difference between veteran and ancient, is there a clear distinction between those?
No, in a way it's a subjective thing, but there is guidelines. There are, for different species, there are graphs saying if it's over this sort of girth, it would be erring into an ancient tree, and different species and different growth rates, so there'll be different sizes. So a sort of colloquial definition is it's a tree that makes you go wow, would be an ancient tree, and be that awe-inspiring sort of feeling. But then also an ancient tree is one where you can see that it's been through multiple stages of growth, and what you'd say is a development phase for a tree. So an oak tree, for example, you'd be able to see that it's gone up and it's done its mature oak, it's lost limbs, and then it's shrunk back down again, and then it's gone back up again, and then it's come back down again, and it's gone back up again. And you can see that history in the shape and form of an ancient tree. So an ancient tree is a veteran tree. It's been a veteran multiple times, and it's gone through them.
And presumably it's different for different species, because we're looking at a couple of yews. A yew tree can last 2,000 years. So what might be old for a yew tree is very different from what might be old for a cherry tree, for instance. So you can't apply the same rule for all trees, presumably.
You can apply that same thinking and principle to all trees, that has it been through multiple stages of life and development. Yew trees for sure are some of our oldest living trees. Something that's really stood out to me in Powys in Wales, and is how they will put roots down into the inside of their decaying stems. Roots go down, they're called adventitious roots, and it's literally feeding off of the decaying body of itself.
Wow.
And then those adventitious roots become stems. And I've seen this over and over and again in some of the oldest yews, that the internal stems are adventitious roots, and the outside of the tree is decayed and hollow, and so in theory a yew tree is potentially immortal. They just go on and on, because you can see some of these big stems that will have adventitious roots inside them, but that big stem might have been an adventitious root originally. So they're just incredible trees, and all trees will do that.
And so why is it important that this thing exists? Why make a register of ancient trees, apart from the fact you might quite like an excuse to go around the country listing them, which I get that might be fun, but why is it important?
I think there's several reasons, really. Apart from a simple one would be cultural and social history, and their heritage as part of our common collective heritage. But then there's also, from a more sort of biological view, they are old genetics. They're old genes that have persisted, so they're adapted to their conditions, and who knows how many offspring they've generated, and the genetics that tree came from, going back into millennia. So I think they're an important reserve of genetic history. They're also nodes of undisturbed soil, so they obviously clearly have been there such a long time that the roots and the mycorrhizal associations under the ground and the complexity of life that is in that area is like a node of life, and of part of our landscape that hasn't changed, and that is an incredibly important place, akin to ancient woodland soils.
And the whole idea about ancient woodland itself is that you can't replace tree for tree. You can't knock down an ancient tree and put in a new tree and it be as environmentally beneficial. So surely it's important, because if we want to know about how to modify our landscape, where we should build new homes or anything, then actually it's important to know what we're disturbing. You can only do that if you know what's there.
Absolutely, yeah, and sorry, distracted.
That's fine. No, distracted slightly by the ominous bells of the church in whose yard we are sitting in at the moment. So yeah, we're under a beach. You might hear the rain. We're carrying from sort of fairly light rain, and in this churchyard, and just listening to those bells. Anyway, they've gone. They've gone. So
where Charles Darwin was baptised.
So in this church is Charles Darwin. Well, that raises a really interesting point, because also I know the local community were trying to protect an oak, and they called it the Charles Darwin oak. It's always good to have a name, isn't it? And they called it that because they were saying, well, Charles Darwin could legitimately have played under this oak. It's old enough, and it's where he was baptised and everything. And it raises this issue, doesn't it, about people's connections to trees and local communities' connections to trees. And as an outsider, it feels that is becoming more a thing that people talk about. And just regular people do feel it's important to have this connection.
I think it really is, yeah. I think people are now realising much more how the trees and the ecosystems around them actually provide us with the atmosphere and our ability to live on this planet. It really is such a fundamental part of being human and survival to look after these green spaces. That it's people do realise that. I think people do recognise that.
It brings us on to the debate about the environment and protection. It was interesting, on the way here I was reading an article by Jonathan Friedland, a great writer, who was talking about the ecological debate, saying he said the ecological sort of lobby group have the argument right, but they're using the wrong words. And he was saying that their argument isn't framed in the right way. But it feels like this is a super important moment, maybe a flex point. One doesn't want to overemphasize these things, but it does feel that. Right this week we are seeing heat waves. Sort of properly dangerous heat waves in southern Europe. Flooding. There was flooding on the motorway as I came here, so we have extremes of weather which feel very unusual for this sort of early summery type period. How worried are you about the environment and our ability to actually do something to protect it and our place in it?
I'm confident that we have the know-how and the ability as humans to change our ways to a more sustainable way of living in harmony. I think that is changing. I think the economics has got to be part of this debate and conversation. I read a fantastic book in 2008 by Eric Beinhofer, The Origin of Wealth. I don't know if you've heard of this. And looking at the environment as complex adaptive systems, but he was also saying how the economy is a complex adaptive system. And evolution is you can't predict what's going to happen sometimes. And
No, I understand. That's interesting. The economy is itself an ecology, and it adapts to the environment that it's facing. And I agree. I used to do a series for the BBC called Horizons, when we travelled the world looking at technology, and I tend to the panicky, I have to say. And I thought this wouldn't be good for me when we're looking at big challenges facing the world. And actually, I was really drawn to the fact that there are tech solutions to all sorts of issues, and it's often the money that's preventing. You go, we can fix it, it's just not commercially viable. No one wants to pay to do this at the moment. But if oil prices went through the roof, suddenly this alternative would be commercially viable. So we talk a lot about technology. Sometimes it is the economics of it which are preventing us from doing things, and the economics change, don't they? So that might be.
And it's something that is not predictable, because there's so many moving components, there's so many interactions, there's so many feedback loops that, that's something that intrigues me about complex systems, is that the more complexity you have, the more feedback loops, the more agents that are interacting with each other in a system, the more resilient it is to change. But it can shift if you get some events that are just too much, or you degrade the amount of complexity, then that system becomes less stable, and that's the danger with potentially what we're doing with trees and our environment. If you like, a tree is an emergent property of the soil. It's an expression of what of plant life, and it started as algae coming out of warm freshwater in 600 million years ago, and partnering with fungi to make to have lichens, and then you get soil, and then other things, other more complex plants evolve, and then we've ended up with trees, and they're like the an emergent property of complex systems of the soil.
So we're talking about people's interaction with the environment. I should explain some of the symphony of sound we're hearing. So we had the church bells, we have the rain above us, and I think there is a charity race for life with thousands of people have emerged in the bit of Greenland we were going to actually walk through. And I think there's a sort of charity run going on, and which is what you might hear some big blaring music in the background, which is not as quiet a spot as we thought we might have ended up with, but does show the amenity value of these open green spaces. It's just rather a lot of people have chosen to use it on this particular day. One of the other things I just want to talk to you about is, we were talking about this debate, and I know you talk on behalf of yourself, not the trust, and you're taking a sabbatical, so these are your views. But given the debate we're all having, it feels to me that we talk a lot about Armageddon. And I know from talking to people, my family, they sort of just disengage with it after a while. It just becomes background noise. And I wonder if you have an idea or an insight into how to talk about these issues to explain that they are potentially the difference between humans surviving and not surviving, and yet not just sound like some crazy guy screaming into the wind, and also to stop people going, well, if that's the way it is, that what am I going to do? I just better carry on because I can't do anything about it. Is there a key that we're missing, you feel, or an emphasis that we have wrong in engaging with this topic?
I don't know if I would say I have an answer to whether it's wrong or not, or the way we engage with it, but I think for me the key is connection to nature and encouraging people, and you've got to start young, I think, getting children through forest school perhaps, getting them outside and experiencing nature, because that's where nature connection comes from. And you don't need an ancient tree to give you sense of awe. I mean, I can, and people can find awe in a tiny flower, but it's just a case of looking and spending time plugging in, if you like.
You're right. I mean, I'm not sure I'd quite describe it as awe, but I often have in my car like a little bit of a berry or an acorn. And sometimes it sounds weird now I'm describing it, but if I'm in a traffic jam or something, I look at those things and I go, actually, do you know what? If that was a piece of jewellery that was designed almost identical, we would pay a lot of money for it, and we go, oh, isn't that beautiful? And you'd hang it around your neck in a way that you probably wouldn't hang an acorn around your neck, or most people wouldn't. And yet you look at it and you go, that is quite extraordinary when you take time to look at these things, a leaf or something. And I don't want to sound, too Mother Earthy about it and to turn people off about that. But taking the time just to look sometimes, you go, the wonder is in the detail. It is there, actually. It's quite fun. And it's free. Yeah.
And I think when we go into a potential, an undisturbed habitat like an ancient woodland where there is complexity, and you immerse yourself in those areas, that's where you can see, you can feel life.
Let me take you back to your walk, because from which I have dragged you. 100 odd days plan on the road, carrying all your own stuff. That means you have to find a place to sleep, wash every now and then. I mean, you smell beautiful, so I'm assuming you've found some magic trick, or you are washing, and carrying clothes. What is the trick for doing that? Because sometimes I go away for the weekend and I feel I'm already carrying far too much. How are you doing a 100 odd day walk carrying everything? What's the trick? What's your sort of kit list?
Yeah, well, I did spend about 2 years actually building up different kits and trying different things to be as lightweight as possible. But that's in a way that the whole having to find somewhere to camp, having to find water. These are basic, simple things that take you away from all the other stuff that is going on, in my life, sort of thing. So I can actually immerse myself into the flow of that journey.
So, but just because you're wearing a lightweight top, it's raining, no coat at the moment. I mean, but sort of, how much clothes are you taking, and how many shirts, how many socks, how many pairs of pants? I've never asked this of another man before. How many pairs of pants do you have?
Right. Well, I can answer that. I have 5 pairs of pants, 5 pairs of socks, 3 shirts, 3 t-shirts, just 1 top I'm wearing now, a rain jacket and some waterproof trousers and some walking trousers and a pair of shorts. That is actually my clothing list. The socks, the pants and the t-shirts are all merino wool essentially, so they're very lightweight, they're very thin, very lightweight. Merino wool or wool doesn't pick up smells and odours readily. The socks have got silver woven into them, so they're antifungal, antibacterial, and they're pretty amazing socks actually. And they dry as well, so the t-shirts are very thin merino wool t-shirts. I can wash them and they'll be dry in a few hours, especially with the hot weather that I was having in May and June.
Not the rain. Nothing's going to dry in this rain, although this tree is providing some amazing cover for us. So look, you've come into Shrewsbury to meet me, to have a look at this ancient tree, which I might leave you to measure yourself, given the increasing amount of rain that is pouring down on us. And I stupidly did not bring a coat, because I just thought it was such nice weather when I left. Anyway, when I leave you, where are you off to? Where is the next sort of part of this walk taking you?
Well, will be taken back to my tent, which I've left at a campsite near Brecon, and then I am heading north to some yew trees, and then up to Welshpool and Oswestry, and then across towards in between Liverpool and Manchester, and then north Cumbria, Scotland. We'll see how far we get.
I know you thought the first bit of the trip you've not been on pace to actually complete it, but you never know. You might pick up. It might get easier going.
I've actually slowed down. I thought I would speed up as I went along, and as I got fitter and stronger, I thought I would speed up. But actually, I've started to slow down and go at the pace. At a pace that my body wants to go at, as well as the time and mental space that I wanted to have from this trip. Yeah,
that's the difference in us. You're going to go off measure a tree. I'm going to find a coffee somewhere dry. Look, best of luck. An amazing journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if you've been inspired by Martin's journey and want to help protect veteran and ancient trees, but don't want to take a marathon walk the length of the country, there is still something you can do from the comfort of your armchair.
So I'm Adele Benson, I'm a campaigner at the Woodland Trust.
So what can people do to actually help?
We're running currently the Living Legends campaign to secure better legal protection for our oldest and most special trees. Because ultimately we are seeing some of our oldest trees with, immense ecological, wildlife and historic value being felled, or the value of them is not being fully appreciated in law. We've got a petition with almost 50,000 signatures, and we're trying to ultimately get to 100,000.
So if anyone is interested, they can search the Woodland Trust's Living Legends campaign on their computer, and you can sign that online. Great stuff. I think people might be surprised to learn that buildings often, or perhaps most of the time, get better legal protection than trees, even if the tree is older and actually more significant than the built structure next to it.
Yeah, so in Hampstead Heath, there's it's approximately 300-year-old beech tree, and it was planted next to a fence that had just been erected. So think back 300 years ago. Now this fence has a grade 2 listing on it, but the beech tree doesn't have any legal protection at all. So when they were found that the roots of the beech tree and the trunk was sort of impacting quite heavily on the fence, they wanted to essentially cut down this tree and remove it. However, that's not now happened, luckily. But it's essentially having that equivalent of protection that is so desperately needed, because we're valuing this built heritage, but we're not valuing this natural heritage that we have such a wealth of in the UK. The Woodland Trust celebrated its 50th anniversary last year, and in that time it's been working considerably to protect some of our oldest and most special trees and woodland. And ultimately, I think it's now a time for action.
So let's just remind everyone that is the Living Legends campaign, which you can search for online if you want to sign that petition. And if you just want to find a woodland near you to walk in, just go to the Woodland Trust website, type in "Find a Wood." It will come up with a whole range of places near you that you can visit. Until next time, happy wandering.
Thank you for listening to the Woodland Trust Woodland Walks. Join us next month when Adam will be taking another walk in the company of Woodland Trust staff, partners and volunteers. And don't forget to subscribe to the series on iTunes or wherever you're listening to us, and do give us a review and a rating. And why not send us a recording of your favourite woodland walk to be included in a future podcast? Keep it to a maximum of 5 minutes, and please tell us what makes your woodland walk special. Or send us an email with details of your favourite walk and what makes it special to you. Send any audio files to podcast@woodlandtrust.org.uk, and we look forward to hearing from you.